Welcome, listeners, to a realm where shadows dance and whispers echo. I'm your host, Rick Clifton, and this is Quills and Chills, the podcast that brings you face to face with the masterminds behind the macabre. In each episode, we journey into the minds of horror writers and filmmakers to uncover the secrets lurking within their tales of terror. From classic tales to modern nightmares, we'll traverse the corridors of the human psyche and unravel the threads of dread that keep us turning the pages or sitting out there in the dark. Welcome to Quills and Chills. Welcome back to Quills and Chills. I'm your host, Rick Clifton. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by actor Russell Todd. For me, he is a beloved figure in the world of horror and 80s cinema. He is also known for some very iconic roles in the Friday the 13th franchise, especially Part 2. Also, Chopping Mall, which is a fun one as well. I think you're in that with Barbara Crampton, is that right?
Exactly, Rick. Yeah, good to be here, first of all. Thank you.
You got it. So I'm excited to have Russell here to talk about his career as it has spanned across genres from horror to comedy to drama. And he brings a wealth of experience today. And welcome to the show, Russell.
Thank you so much, Rick. Again, good to be here. I appreciate you asking me.
Of course. So how about we start out? Just tell us a little bit about you and your early life. Like what kind of things inspired you creatively growing up? What led you to entertainment and to pursue a career in this business?
Well, that's a great question because my mom was a singer. And she was in a trio called the Darlin Sisters. And I have a great picture of her like on a bare rug. There's three of the women and they're like, like this facing the camera. It's a great shot. And she would perform in upstate New York. And my dad, who lived in Tarrytown, came up and met her and fell in love instantly with her. And they married. And for my entire childhood, we lived in Troy, New York, outside of Albany. But they would expose us to the arts. We would go down to New York City to see musicals, to see dramatic shows. We go out to Tanglewood to see, the orchestra. In fact, Bradley Cooper's film, what was it about? Who was it? Oh my gosh, I just forgot.
Yes,
Leonard
Maestro.
Yes, Leonard Bernstein. And I would see him as a kid conduct the orchestra. And Saratoga Performing Arts Center. We went all over to see theater and orchestras and music. So I was exposed to the arts early on, and I always wanted to do something in the arts. And then I won a contest on the radio, and I guessed how many jelly beans were in a hot air balloon flying over Albany. Just a lucky guess, I don't know, so many millions, all the way down to the, whatever. And I guessed that I want a movie camera. And I thought,
oh, wow.
I want to be a movie director now. I'm like 12 years old. So I started making little movies. I put a map on the floor and I found two little Matchbox cars. And I put one in LA and I put one in New York. And I stopped motion them till they met in the middle of the country. And then they exploded. So I put some kerosene on them, when they finally hit, and I lit it up. And of course, when it goes, they explode. And it looked great. The movie came out great. But what I didn't realize is I lifted up the map at the end of the shooting and I burned the entire linoleum floor in the kitchen. So I was then forbidden to make movies like that. But so I went on to make a Western and I put up doors, Western doors to the entrance of this one room we had at the house. And there was a bar in that house. And I invited my friends to be in it. And I submitted it to Kodak for the Young Filmmakers Awards. And I won honorable mentions, which was, as a kid, I was like, oh my God, from Kodak. So I said, I'm going to pursue this as a career. And I made one other movie. I went to college at Syracuse University. I was in their film and their acting program a little, but in their film program. And during my time at Syracuse, I wrote a woman named Verna Fields, who, if you know, she edited and won the Academy Award for Jaws. And I wrote her and I sent one of the films I was making at the university. And she wrote back and I also compared myself to Steven Spielberg. I forgot about that part. Since I started,
there you go.
The most important part. Since I was, making films at an early age and wanted to get into that business. And she wrote me back saying, I'm so impressed with you. I loved your film. And then I sent her the one I made as a kid, that Kodak liked. And she goes, I'd love to help you out. I said, are you kidding? So I said, first, would you like to come to Syracuse and be a guest speaker? So she did come, and I, chaperoned her around for the week. And we hit it off, and she brought me out to Los Angeles, and I was a tour guide at Universal out here for 1 year. That was what she could get me, with no skills or talent at that time. And but what I had, what the other tour guides didn't have, is she gave me free roam of the lower lot, so I could watch all the productions being made.
Oh, that is gold.
It was amazing to walk into any sound stage and be able to watch and learn and ask questions. And I really thought, this is what I want to be a film director still. But I was giving the tour 4 times a day, and you sit in front of the, in that seat in front of everybody, and how many times, I don't know, there were so many times people said, "Are you an actor? You look like an actor." And I said, "No, I really want to be a film director." But my friends start saying, "Everyone's saying you should be an actor. Maybe, try it." So I got my first headshots out here in Los Angeles, and I started going out for commercials, and I started booking the commercials. And I figured, well, maybe I should do this. So that's where I went in that direction, and it pretty much stayed in that. So that's where it began.
Well, I was about to ask, was there a specific moment or an experience that you felt was kind of the deciding factor, right? That you fully decided to commit to a career as an actor, or was it more of a gradual process? Did it just kind of happen and you look up one day and you're like, okay, I'm an actor now? Or
yeah, well, I don't know. I think all actors still think they're frauds, even though you're acting. But
it doesn't matter what you're doing; you have that every day.
Yeah, everyone does. I'm still a fraud at what I do. But I did those things. I came back to New York. I was then a model in New York, and while I was modeling, I would go off on commercial auditions as well. And I remember coming back to the modeling office one day, and they said, "You just booked a job." I said, "I didn't even go on that job." They said, "Yeah, but they took your, out of our book. They liked your face." And there was a cologne back in the 80s called Jovan, Jovan, Jovan. And so I was the Jovan Musk guy for like a year and a half. So I did the commercials, I did the print. So I got that. I got a SAG card the first SAG card was my first commercial, actually, was for a store called Corvettes, which was like a Target kind of store in New York. And that got me my SAG card. And then things just kind of steamrolled, getting some parts of movies and things, and, that we'll probably talk about. And I just thought, well, this is going well. Let's continue doing it. And I was enjoying it. I really enjoyed playing different characters and being different people. So I guess that just kept me on that road.
That's great. So were there any other mentors or influences in your life that sort of helped propel your career forward, especially in the early years?
Well, I was in love with the films of Charlie Chaplin. Never met the guy, of course, but when I saw his films, I knew there was magic on that screen, both from the acting side and from the filmmaker side. So that too made me really want to be in the industry, because I just thought, it creates magic, and people will laugh, they'll cry, they'll relate. And there was just magic in that. And so he was an early influence, and I started making, as I said, movies, because I had his Super 8 movies. I'd watch him in that same den where I made that Western. And
not the one where you nearly burned down the house, though.
No, that was totally separate. And I never shot anything in the kitchen again. I don't think my parents had me give back my weekly allowance to pay for a new floor or not. Well, $5.
Well, I mean, that was practical and extremely practical, right? So
it was
the days of practical filmmaking. So
only I was thinking that it would burn through to the floor.
Right? Yeah, it's all about the shot.
Exactly.
So I hear you.
But I just, just a love of the arts early on is really the main influence, I think, for my parents wanting to be in the industry.
Well, you've definitely had some iconic roles. For me, your role in Friday the 13th Part 2, it was probably one of Friday the 13th is one of those movies that it was one of the first horror films that I ever saw. I think it's sort of what cemented my love for horror, in that it scared the living crap out of me, and I've never been the same ever since.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it has shaped my life in many, many ways. But your role, and especially your death, your kill, I guess, if you will, pretty amazing. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what it was like being on set for that. That's what I want to know. What was that experience filming that scene?
Well, it's funny because that scene, usually, when you make a film, you're usually shooting out a sequence.
Right.
And for some reason, my stuff kind of went in sequence, with my death being on my last day. And one of the funny things is I called my parents that morning and said, they're filming my death scene today. And they said, and my mom got quiet. I said, what's wrong, Mom? She goes, I don't understand. Why did they wait to your last day to shoot your death scene? I said, it just felt that way. She, are you sure this isn't a snuff film? she did say that to me, even though it was a Paramount picture, a sequel to a hit prior. I'll never forget that. She thought it was a snuff film, and that's why they saved it. But so we did it. I was very excited because my friend John Caglione, who's a special effects makeup artist, he had worked on the prosthetic that was here.
Mm-hmm.
Which, they took molds of my neck so it would fit properly. And it had a little, it was pre-slit actually. So because the machete wasn't going to actually cut across me. So it just kind of went against it. So it was pre-slit. There was tubing going from that. And I was upside down, of course, going all the way down to my chest and down my leg and out my ankle. And there was a guy up in the tree with a big compression tank full of blood. He was pumping the blood on cue. So it would just shoot out of there. All I had to do was act and pull my head back to reveal the gaping wound. But there was pressure that day because I know they wanted to get it in one take because first of all, it's bloody, but we did have another, a standby set of clothing just in case. But I believe it was, late at night and we needed to get the shot before it became light out. And he said, get it in one, Russ. And so it had a little extra pressure to it. But we did get it at one, and it all went smoothly. I was probably hanging up there, I don't know, from 30 to 45 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe not that much. But someone was holding my back up. So
that was my question is like, is there somebody there that in between when the camera's not rolling that's giving you some kind of relief?
Once I was attached by my feet, they had someone holding me for quite a while, just fine tuning the touch-ups on the makeup, on the prosthetic, and being sure that everything was in place, that the counts would go well as far as 1, slice, 2, head back, 3, eyes roll, 4, pumping the blood, and just making sure it was all going to fall in line. And it did. It went great. And, I think in the box set, there's a longer version of the death. And in that, you can see the blood coming further down and toward my eyes. And it literally did go into my eyes. And that's a point, they fully cut, but it never gets that far in the movie because of the rating gods.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So, but it was exciting. It was an exciting night, and that was a wrap on my character right after that.
Well, I absolutely love that you did that in one take. Having done a similar bloody scene myself, it took 4 hours to shoot a scene, and ultimately we ended up coming from inside the room to outside the room so we could just see the silhouette because it just was like blood does not cooperate.
What was that for?
It was a short film that I directed a few years ago. So, but it was a horror film that ends in a bloody axe to the neck, and like I said, blood just doesn't cooperate. So
yeah, sometimes it doesn't. No.
We had to improvise, and that's exactly what we did. So how do you think the horror genre itself has evolved? I mean, like from the slasher picks of the 80s, right? I mean, it just kind of exploded, I think, with like Halloween and Friday the 13th and all of these movies. How do you think it's evolved from then to now?
Well, it's become even more popular. I mean, right now there's such a resurgence for horror, as you know. I can't tell you how many, I see breakdowns because I submit, as an actor, of course, and my agent submits. And so many horror pictures are being made. I think in the last, 6 months, I've probably gone to 4 or 5 screenings of films that are coming out that are horror pictures. I just did one, which we'll probably talk about, called Stiletto, which is coming out the beginning of next year. And I just think, it's a genre that is timeless. People love to be scared, admit it or not, they love to be scared. And there's nothing like being to me, I'd rather be in a dark theater being scared than it being home. I mean, maybe home is a little scarier because then you're looking behind you, like, you're looking at the windows to see if anyone's looking in or not. But there's something still magical to me about being in a dark theater with other people sharing the experience and the screams and the laughs and the fear. And it's communal, and somehow it just crosses over. You not only you're feeling what you're feeling, but you're getting it from the person next to you, in front of you, and back of you. So it adds to the entire excitement of being there. But I think that, like I said, it's come back tremendously, and I think people are getting more clever. The kills, the deaths, the stories are better. most of the time. Not always. But I think they've done incredible things. And of course, effects today, they can do anything.
Right. We could do I mean, that's not to be said. I love a practical effect in a horror film as much as possible. But yeah, there's a lot that can be done, not only with practical, but also with like digital effects as well.
Right. So, sure. Yeah. And when you're standing there as an actor, sometimes you have no idea. I mean, you're told what you're playing against, but you still have no idea what the visuals will actually be. So that can be challenging and incredibly rewarding.
I think about some of the bigger tentpole films, the popcorn films like the Marvel movies and stuff. And most 80–90% of those films are shot against blue or green screen. And I'm like, geez, that's got to be difficult, man. So
I love watching the, on Instagram or Facebook or something, you'll see the, behind the scenes clips and stuff. And I love it. Just like you said, they're standing there with nothing.
Right.
Except the line. This is where you're going to be looking.
So, and I agree with you that there's nothing like watching it in a theater. It's a very different experience. Though I will say Halloween H2O, when that came out, when it actually came to home video, I was watching that at home by myself one night. I went upstairs after the movie was over to go to bed, and I had a little Scotty that would sleep she would sleep on the foot of my bed. And so I got into bed. It's like 2 a.m. or something. I get into bed and I'm probably hitting that point where you're about to sleep. And one wall is like wall-to-wall closet. She stands up on the edge of the bed and starts barking furiously at the closet. It was probably 10 feet from my bed to the bathroom door. I did not touch the floor. So I went from the bed to the bathroom, and then I was like, what the hell is going on in this house right now? It was the craziest thing. Still don't know what it was. I think it might have been a mini earthquake or something, but whatever it was, it freaked me out.
By a ghost.
Yeah, it was enough to freak me out. So.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, those things are scary.
Is there anything that you feel like elements and stuff that you missed or you wish filmmakers would try and bring back today? I feel like there's a lot of filmmakers that are trying to bring back some of the old school ways of, like I said, practical effects are another big thing I feel like I'm seeing a resurgence in filmmaking these days.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I can't think of anything specifically that I truly miss, except, a good story.
Yeah.
A good story matters so much, outside of the effects, the act, everything. If you don't have a good story, you've got nothing. And a lot of time projects are coming out and, the stories aren't that great. And you just lose interest. I don't care how much blood is flowing, if we're talking about horror or how intense the music gets to get your senses going. If the story's not there, you've got nothing.
Right. That's exactly right. I think zombie films it took me a long time to get on board with the zombie genre. And I think what really brought me over was the Walking Dead series. And it was really about the storytelling. It's getting the characterization, getting into it's just so well. It was just so well done, and you got to the point where you didn't see any of the horror aspects that were happening. It was really about what was happening with the character.
You're trapped in the story. It keeps you going. Yeah,
exactly. So your career actually goes beyond horror as well. You starred in things like Where the Boys Are, He Knows You're Alone, all of those, but also soap operas too, like The Young and Restless. And as I said, I think at the beginning, my favorite soap opera, Another World. So I would love to talk about sort of your career trajectory and what was it like sort of picking those projects and deciding what you were going to do next and sort of how that progressed along.
Well, I had done some smaller parts on soap operas out here in Los Angeles, reoccurring as this kind of red herring character on Bold and the Beautiful. And then when one of the main characters on Young and the Restless got ill, I came in, they called me up and said, would you like to replace him? It could be, a month. It could be forever. Who knows, if he's coming back. And I went in there, I think it ended up being about 8 months on Young and the Restless. And that was all terrific. But when I got the call from New York, first of all, I'm living in Los Angeles. These shows were LA, but I got a call to come to New York and screen test with Anne Heche at the time with Annie and to be Dr. Jamie Frame. And I thought, well, do I want to really move to New York and be an actor again? I said, what the hell? Why not? So I flew in for the test and the test went well, but they didn't say anything. And I came back and just a few days later, they said, pack your bags, you're coming in. You have a 3-year contract.
Oh, wow.
So it was, and to play a guy that's been on the show for years and years and years, I was the 10th actor to play Dr. Jamie Frame. So there was a lot of history there. What's funny, just I'll jump ahead a little. When I would leave the studio in Brooklyn, a lot of fans would, because they knew where we were shooting, they'd wait outside the studio, and I played a doctor. And so they would come up to me. Some of them would ask me medical questions.
Oh, no.
And I'd say, you do realize I'm just playing a doctor. I really don't know anything. But everyone was so sweet. They were terrific. But on top of that, they would tell me information about Jamie because they've been following the show for 30 years or 25 years, whatever it was. And they knew the character. They knew all the guys that played it and everything that happened in Jamie's life. And basically, I knew, the last year, 2, 3 years. I hadn't really done all the research of who he was all those years ago. So it was an education just talking to the fans about my character. But it was very different. I had jumped around and done guest stars on a number of shows. I had a TV series with Robert Conrad called High Mountain Rangers. I had played Cesar Romero's son in 2 episodes of Riptide, which was incredible. Chuck Connors, the rifleman, I was his friend in a movie. Glenn Ford, I did a Western with Glenn. I hope I'm not jumping on all the things you were going to ask about.
Nope. This is it. Just keep going.
All right, good. And so, I did a Western with him in Arizona. So I loved jumping around and playing different characters. That was the thrill of acting to me. And then I get on the show and they go, you got a 3-year contract. I'm thinking, well, that's great. It's a wonderful opportunity, which it is, and good money for that amount of time. But getting into it as you're playing the same guy, and I was a doctor, I wasn't a villain, which can be really juicy and fun. Mm-hmm. And, I'm trying to think of things that exciting that happened in Jamie's character to his life. But the most, devilish thing he did, he was having an affair with an intern, And I remember speaking to one of the writers, I said, can you maybe have me kill my grandmother?
Yeah, let's get some villain levels happening.
Ada wouldn't mind. Come on. Unfortunately, she truly died in real life later, but that was later. But I wanted it to be juicier, and it wasn't. But again, I'm very grateful for it. It was a great opportunity. Made some wonderful friendships, and we just had a reunion, in fact, which was great to go back to.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was nice in Tarrytown, New York, where my dad was born. Oh. But it changed my concept and feeling about the industry. So when I left there and came back to LA, I decided that I would try something different. I thought maybe I'd get into producing or something behind the scenes. And then I went on an audition for a Sharon Stone commercial, which I did book, which was great. She chose me for it, which was a Scotch that played around the world, but not in the United States. And I did that commercial, and the person who was running that commercial said, you should check out this agency. They're looking for someone to work there as an intern and assistant to the head of the TV department. And I thought, how am I going to do that? I just came off a show. This is going to be interesting transition. But I said, why not? Who cares? So I went there and I loved the owner of the company. I thought she was this dynamic woman. And they liked me and I took the job. And I'm really jumping ahead here. And like 2 weeks after I was there, a guy walked in and said, do you represent Steadicam operators? And I said, let me get back to you. And I realized no agency repped Steadicam operators in the world. So I started the first division of Steadicam operators, and it grew and it grew. And I left there after a couple of years, and I opened up my own agency for the last 23 years, which I sold actually a year and a half ago. And I'm back to acting now. But all that was in there because the story was, what was it originally? Something about a transition.
More about your career trajectory.
So
find the word trajectory.
Trajectory. Yeah. So after my main point was playing the same guy for 3 years was not as exciting as jumping around and playing all those other characters I mentioned. So at the end of the 3 years, I knew I was going to leave. And they sent my character off to Paris for a doctor's convention, and the character never came back. There was no 11th Dr. Jamie frame. But it was truly the best decision I ever made because I loved being an agent for my own company for 23 years. I had like 50, 60 Steadicam operators. I was still in the industry. I was dealing with UPMs, DPs, directors of photography, as you know, production designers, all of these people making wonderful contacts. And then when I sold that, I thought I would like to go back into acting. I do miss it. And I was fortunate enough right away to go to a Christmas party with my friend Doug Jones. You know Doug? He's a million movies. But he brought me, and I met Matthew Hirsch, who's a producer, who was doing a movie called Stiletto, was Samuel Gonzalez directed, produced by Gigi. Do you know Gigi also?
I
Who,
don't, but I'm very excited about the film.
yeah,
I've heard some great things about it. So
yeah. I've heard some great things too. We're finally going to get a screening coming up, which I'm very excited about. But I said, it was a Christmas party. We said hello. We said goodbye. I wrote him after the new year, Matthew Hirsch, the producer, and said, it was great meeting you. Have a fantastic year. He said, oh, by the way, we're shooting a film later this month. I'd love you to play this creepy guy. And I said, creepy guy? I'm in.
done.
So he said, but just send a quick reel over, a quick self-tape over to the director, Sam Gonzalez. And I never met Samuel, but I sent it over and he said, are you kidding? I know who you are. I loved you in Friday the 13th Part 2. And just recently I was at his apartment and he actually has the Friday the 13th Part 2 poster in his
love it.
in his home. So that was great. And they booked it and we shot it. And it's finally coming out at the beginning of next year. And it's a terrific film from what I know, shooting it and visually fantastic and scary, some great kills in it. It's a horror thriller and it's called Stiletto. Yeah.
I'm excited for it actually. So
that was the longest answer to one question, Rick.
it was perfect because you actually have set me up perfectly for my next question, and I love this. So all of that, knowing all of this, I want to know how all of this experience that you've gained, both in front of the camera and behind the camera and everything that you've done, how has it now influenced your view or your attitude towards acting and when you step into a role? I asked that question because it's not about me, but anyway, when I first got to LA, I thought I wanted to be an actor. And every time you go on an audition, they're always telling you everybody in the room is rooting for you. But as an actor just first starting out, you're like, no, they're not. And I'm terrified. And they're going to think I'm fucking terrible. And like all of these thoughts that go through your head, right? And it wasn't until I actually produced my first piece where I was like, I want you to make this easy for me. So yeah, I am rooting for you.
Yeah.
And that's when it changed for me. And I'm kind of curious with all of this experience that you've amassed now, both on both sides of the industry, how has that shaped and changed your view and your experience on acting?
Well, I think what you said is truly valid. As an actor, you go on an audition and you're always thinking, you're nervous and you're thinking, I got to get this and everything, but they are truly on your side. And you have to take that out of the equation because it just relax and understand that they want you to be the right person for them. They're not saying, oh, let me just get through this other person. The casting director is on your side. And that's a wonderful thing to keep in your head always. For me, coming back to acting is truly, it's like starting fresh again, because when I first started so many years ago, it was about getting work, having a career, making enough money to sustain my life, and all of those things that most actors worry about. But now I've had so many years, I'm an older guy, I'm retired from my business. I sold my business. I'm financially fine. I don't care. I don't have to have a career that's, the most famous person or anything like that. It's now about love of acting and about fun. So I go on things with no nerves. I go on them with just excitement and the thrill of just acting and enjoyment. And it's a big change because, like I said, when you're starting off in acting, there's so many worries and you're worried about it as a career and money and all of that. And when that's taken off the table, you can relax, you can be that character, you can just, take it all in. And I think it really, truly improves your performance. So that now I think is perfect timing for me. I've seen so many things, both like you said, in front of the camera and behind the camera. I've learned from other actors, from other films. I was just lucky enough I mentioned John Caglione before. He's Al Pacino's makeup guy and does all the special effects on Al. And they're doing a movie about King Lear right now. And I was on the set a couple of times and I sat there watching Al Pacino work for 2 days with Jessica Chastain and Peter Dinkler, and just watching all of them, but especially Al, just to watch him work was a masterclass in acting. And I think, when you have the chance to do something like that, or even if you're not going to a set, but watching it, on TV or a movie theater to get to see some of these incredible actors perform, you can learn a great deal from them just by observing.
And the freedom of not having all that pressure and just to be able to allow yourself to take it all in.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty great. Is there a role or a project that you passed on that you maybe wish you hadn't?
Nothing I passed on I wish I had done, but I remember Endless Love years ago. I think the guy Martin Hewitt got it with Brooke Shields, but I was supposed to do that movie, and then things changed on that. But I remember us walking around with Franco Zeffirelli, buying clothing for the character and doing all these things, and then that disappeared. So that would have been interesting. Not, wasn't a well, I don't want to say anything about the movie, but but it would have been nice to have got that early in my career. But nothing that I can remember or think of that was offered and we passed on. But as an agent, which I'll never forget, La La Land came to my office and they wanted to hire one of my Steadicam operators. And it was a tier movie. It wasn't a big budget movie at all. And we thought, we read it and it sounded okay, but the money was so low that we had passed. And what a mistake that was.
Yeah, I was going to say La La Land. Come on now.
Yeah, it ended up being a terrific movie. Yeah. And, my client and I
took home a few awards too. So.
Yeah. Don't rub it in.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, how about the flip side of that? Is there any role or anything that you've taken on either side of the business that you're especially proud of being a part of?
I think one of the best performances is in Stiletto coming up. It's so great to play a villain, a creepy guy. There's just so much there.
They are the best, right?
Yeah, there really is, And I was told by a number of people that the work is really good. And so I'm proud of that. I'm looking forward to seeing it. What else? There were some days on the soap opera where I just thought were magical. Whether I was working with Annie Heche or Carmen Duncan or John Aprea, or a number of them where it just clicked so well that you just felt, you're on cloud nine at the end of those scenes. And there's just certain times when you're acting where you feel everything has come together perfectly. And it's a wonderful feeling because it's not always, that's for sure. And, very different than theater where you only have one shot every night.
Yep.
We have multiple takes, but you only have so many because, pressure of time.
In the world of soap opera too, it really moves.
Oh yeah,
a nice clip. So,
and Carmen Duncan and I used to get into laughing fits, and once you probably have had in your sets too, but once you have a laughing fit, it's almost impossible.
You can't stop it. Yep.
Remember, we'd hear from the up above in the booth. Let's move it. Come on, we got to get to the next. And you could not get the words out without laughing. It's a really interesting sensation when you can't stop. But so there was a lot of magic there. The Western I did called Border Shootout, to be in that Western gear and covered in dirt and working opposite Glenn Ford, and Charlene Tilton was in that too. There was a thrill. I was like every childhood dream, doing a Western and a long black slicker and a hat and a slow motion gunfight at the end where I get blown up in slow motion, not blown up, but shot. Yeah. And I felt that those scenes were really, really well done too.
That the magic of this industry and the magic of movie making. So.
Yeah.
So the rise of indie filmmaking has given a lot of opportunities to horror filmmakers these days, especially those that may not have access to, bigger studios and the budgets that come along with those. Mm-hmm. In your opinion, do you see like indie films sort of shaping the future of horror, say?
Well, I think that there's just so much opportunity for indies and they are doing a lot of horror. So it does give these filmmakers, talented people, a chance that they wouldn't have had before. So I think it's fantastic that they're finding ways of funding them, whether it be a GoFundMe or whatever they use, Indiegogo, friends, wealthy friends,
yes.
Which is always nice if you make a movie.
Favors,
lots of favors. In fact, yeah. Friend of mine who just made his first film, he called in all the favors, and it was incredible. He couldn't believe how many people devoted time, energy, cameras, lighting, where obviously reduces costs dramatically. But the studio system is changing so much. You see what's happening in the news with the studios. They're making less content, they're merging, they're laying people off. So it's the whole thing has changed dramatically. So these indie films, I think, are crucial. I mean, they're going to fill the void of all the content that is not going to be made. Quality. What's that?
That's exactly right. I mean, you're exactly right. I feel like that we're obviously in it's sorry, I'm trying this again. The industry is obviously struggling after coming out of the pandemic, and then after the strikes, and not just one but two strikes, and then it's finding a hard time finding itself. I can't find my words today, Russell. It's becoming very difficult to find their feet. And so I do believe I agree with you that indie filmmaking is going to help fill that void. And I think it's going to come back in a big way in the next couple of years. Like, we've certainly seen booms in this industry with indie filmmaking, but I feel like it's really going to rise up in a very special way. And I hope it does.
I do too. And you're seeing, obviously, there's so many film festivals. So these people are having an opportunity to be seen in these festivals. And many of our great filmmakers of tomorrow will be these people that will be recognized and, and given the chance to make their second film and third film, and will grow in their creativity and have better resources. So they're people to watch for sure. Yeah.
So if you had a chance to direct or produce an indie horror film, what kind of story would you want to tell, and what type of horror would you focus in?
That's a tough one, Rick. I'll tell you what's always fascinating about films. I would love to do a movie that involved time travel. They come and go. Peggy Sue Got Married is one of my favorite. I love when she went back in time. And that movie was terrific. But I do like time travel for many reasons. And so I would love to do it if it could somehow maybe mix that with horror also. It doesn't have to be a horror film, but if it were mixed with horror, it could be pretty fascinating going back in time. But I haven't thought of the story yet. I've always wanted to go do a story where I've gone back in time to see the dog that I just recently put to sleep.
Oh, no.
No, I did in my own personal life, yes, but I wasn't talking about that. I'm talking about a character that goes back in time. He has just recently put his dog to sleep, and he's given the chance to go back in time and relive that again and be with that dog at the beginning again. And I think it could be very, emotional and sweet, and it probably would not be a horror picture. It would be a tear.
The Cujo version. So.
Yeah. But I've always wanted to do something like that. I'm going to try to write something like that. Yeah.
There's a time travel movie I was going to recommend for you, and I'm struggling to remember the name. It's a French film, and I remember about 10 or 15 years ago, and I want to say it's time bound. I'll find it. I'll share it with you at some point. It just was one of the few time travel movies I've ever seen that, not a horror film, but definitely a thriller. And it was just so, like, for me, it was just so well done. I just loved it because it was tight. It was taut. It was like the tension was there, the excitement was there, and it didn't let up from beginning
That's
to
great.
end. So
and did you believe the vehicle for transporting going back in time, that it was possible in it?
I totally did, and that was the thing that I think stood out to me the most. Is like, okay, I'm into this. I buy into this. So
good. Yeah, you have to. That's the thing. You have to suspend belief, but sometimes they really make it viable for you, which is nice.
Yeah, and I think they did it really well.
Sure. Yeah.
So looking back at all of your roles, is there a favorite moment or memory from any set or any scene that say ranks as your all-time favorite?
Wow. I would think, going back to that Western, coming out, all these bandits have taken over this town, and I'm a bad guy, but I've decided he's a bad guy with a good heart, which is fun. He decides he's going to switch over and help the authorities, help the sheriff. So all these guys are just shooting everyone, and you hear this great music, this great tease, and the camera tracks along this Western town, and you hear a gate open, and the gate opens, and I'm standing there in that duster and everything, and I forget what the line was, but I'm going to take on all of these guys with one gun. And I'm standing there, and I start shooting, and I get hit a few times, and I'm flying in slow motion onto the ground. I get back up. You hear the cocking of the gun, and the sound is great. They did great sound on this scene, and then I get shot and killed at the end during that slow motion scene. But to me, that was like a childhood fantasy again, doing that Western, being dressed like that, having that slow motion scene. That was truly one of my favorite. And again, going back to what I just did, Stiletto, playing this guy. I only have a couple of stills from the from the movie. But when I look at those, and what I saw on the set when I was looking at the monitor of other people being filmed, but Samuel Gonzalez, the director, is so terrific in his visuals, his images, the color, the lighting, the angles, that I think, watching the movie itself, if you were to take everything else and just do that, it would be a treat. It would be rewarding for the viewer, because visually it just takes you in. And so doing those scenes in this movie, Stiletto, was also a high point.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I'm like I said, I'm very excited. I've said it 10 times already. I'm pretty excited for Stiletto. So
Good.
it just makes me want it more. So other than Stiletto, which is coming out next year, are there anything else you're working on that's coming up that we should keep an eye out for?
I just played one day in a movie called The Sweetest Day, I believe it's called. And I played the President of the United States.
Oh.
And in a debate with Kelly Maroney, who I did Chopping Mall with, which I forgot to mention also. Chopping Mall was also very fun. We got to blow up the Sherman Oaks Galleria for a month.
I was going to ask, I meant to ask you where that was shot. I was looking at it and I was like, okay, I don't recognize any of this. That's Sherman Oaks Galleria. I love it.
The exterior is the Beverly Center. The interior was the Sherman Oaks Galleria when it was an actual mall. It's very different, as you know now. But that was a lot of fun to do. When they would close, we'd go in there with the guns and the crowbars and, being chased by killer robots. So that was Jim Wynorski directed that, and he and Steve Mitchell, I think Steve wrote it, I believe. And that was also a lot of fun early on. But Kelly Maroney, who was in that, I played the President of the United States in the Sweetest Day movie. And she plays someone trying to be the president. And we're having a debate. And it was actually shot the morning after the Biden debate.
Oh.
So it was like everyone was a little off. I'm so sorry we're doing this debate the following morning. But the performances weren't off, but we all felt awkward about it. Yeah. But it's only one day, one scene. We're on a TV or it cuts into there and they're watching a debate in the movie. But it was fun. That'll be coming out next year also. There's something called Emerald Forest, which originally was going to be a movie. Wait,
I've heard about this. Is that
it's been promoted around?
Oz? Is that some of the Oz?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It was going to be a movie, and they offered me a part to do in it, but now it looks like it's been changed. They're trying to make it into a streaming TV series, so it's being reworked. Hopefully, the part will still be there, and we'll have to see. But that won't be anywhere till probably mid next year if it happens.
And what's the premise? If you can.
It's called, as I said, the Emerald Forest. It's Oz, like 500 years.
That's what I was going to say.
Before Dorothy ever arrives, it has nothing to do with Dorothy. It's kind of about the factions fighting to take control of Oz. The good army, the evil army, and I think I was going to be somewhere like in the army, the head of the evil army or something. But it's an interesting premise, and hopefully it will become a streamer and will actually happen.
Well, fingers crossed, because I have heard about that one as well. I was saying, I feel like that was something centered around Oz, if I remember correctly. So
yeah.
The early days of Oz. So that's fantastic. So
thank you.
So Russell, how can our audience find you on social media? Where are you at these days?
You can just check me out on Instagram, which is Russell Todd LA. That's the place to go. And yeah.
Cool. I'll put that in show notes, and for the video version, we'll throw it up on screen as well. So
terrific, Rick.
I appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to me today. Like I said, I've been a fan. I've been following you on Instagram for a while, and have known your work as far back as Another World. So I'm super excited to have you here today. I think I reached out on Friday the 13th when you were posting about it. I was like, you have to come and talk to me.
I'm glad you asked.
And I was like, part of me was like, should I hold this back until the next Friday 13th before I put this out, which is not until December. So I don't think it's going to be that long. So
wait, there's another one coming out?
Sorry, no, the next Friday the 13th.
Oh, the actual Friday 13th. Yeah.
They've
been waiting to make a movie. Yeah.
Yeah, but there have been rumors about a new Friday the 13th. But
yeah,
I don't think it has.
I think it's finally out of litigation. They can actually make a movie again.
Yeah.
And the TV series that they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed all that comes together. So, well, thank you so much. And I appreciate your time today.
My pleasure, Rick. Thank you again.
All right. You guys, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time on Quills and Chills. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Quills and Chills. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the mysterious and the haunted. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to support us by subscribing on your preferred podcast platform and leaving us a rating or review, because your feedback helps keep those chills running down both our spines. And feel free to share the show with your favorite fellow horror enthusiasts. Also, if you guys have any spooky stories, strange encounters, or paranormal experiences of your own, I'd love to hear them. Reach out to me on social media or email me at quillsandchillspodcast@gmail.com. Who knows? Your story might end up on a very special episode. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I will see you back here next time on Quills and Chills. Bye, y'all.